Okay. Attempt number 4 at making this last video of benchmarks. It was a fun farm. I'll tell you that. It was a fun farm. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed arguing with people, man. They're right, I'm right. It doesn't matter. We all love Guild Wars 2. I think that's all that we should take from it. And also that I'm right and you guys are wrong. Okay. I'm trying not to... Oh my god, bro. This is why it's attempt number 3. I'm trying not to start this with a confrontation. So, let's do it like this, okay? I made a list and I knocked it down to as little topics that would fit this whole conversation of what I agree on and what we disagree on, okay? What we all agree on and what we disagree on. And a quick disclaimer, when I said, and I'll probably repeat this later, when I said the benchmarks are useless, okay, that wasn't really me misspeaking. It was in the context of the video I was making that the benchmark was useless for that guide, okay? But I doubled down, tripled down on them being useless, okay, because it seemed to rile some people off. Now, how useful are they? We're gonna talk about that. But are they useful? Sure. As much as a screwdriver is useful for hammering a nail with the handle, okay? It's just as useful. It's a tool for a job that doesn't really exist in the game for 95% plus of the game, but it is a tool and that is the best we got. We'll, you know, let's just sum it up with that. Okay, so let's go over benchmarks, what we agree on, okay? Excuse me, can you please keep autoing? Benchmarks, what we agree on. Benchmarks are, and this is like straight up a quote from a comment, benchmarks are maximal performance in an unrealistic scenario. I 100% agree. That is kind of also my point, okay? Yeah, sure, you can check your performance on it. You can check the performance of how fast a plane flies, but then only use it for driving in the parking lot. Like, okay, like you have a tool to measure this flight speed. You're just never gonna measure, like never gonna need the flight speed itself, but that's fine, okay? Are benchmarks useless? No, okay? That was me getting riled up myself because I was already annoyed that I had to remake the video. Are they useless? No. Are they useless in the video that Sirma made in that first video, okay, that is the guide for the warrior paragon with the 3-button rotation that does 36k DPS? Is it useless in that scenario? Yes. Why? Because that build does not work in 98% of the content, okay? It only works in scenarios where you're fighting a golem, basically Bram, Dagda, maybe, but not really serious because of the phase when you have to kill the images pretty fast. Doesn't really work there because it's such a slow build-up, okay? But like, those are probably like the only times where that build I'm like, you know what, it would work here because you can stand on a stationary target and just auto-attack it for a somewhat long duration, okay? Can't think of like a third or fourth example right now. Honestly, it doesn't even work in IBS strikes at all. Okay, maybe bears, maybe, but it doesn't work on the second phase of the bears when one bear dies. So again, I don't know what that build is for. Okay, if you know what that specific build that he made, that he talked about, is for and how the benchmark is relevant, please share. I honestly cannot figure out the relevance of that build to any content, and the fact that it does 36k DPS on a benchmark is, for that specific build, very useless information. Okay, sounds more clickbaity than me saying that benchmarks are bullshit in a video that isn't even focusing about benchmarks. But hey, thanks to that, I got 4 more videos out of it, so let's go. Benchmarking is the only consistent tool we have in Guild Wars 2. I 100% agree. That is the only tool we have. It's not a great tool, but it's better than nothing. Okay, I would much rather hammer a nail with the back of a screwdriver than I would with my fist. Okay, I would much rather have that tool. Benchmarks don't portray the full picture. Yes, they don't. They are something you can take into context. Wingman portrays a much better picture, in my opinion. It has its flaws, but it is, you know, like with everything has a flaw. But Wingman is substantially better to use, as you know, if benchmarks are like 5% of the picture, Wingman is like 50% to 80%. Okay, much better picture. Okay, so this is what we agreed on. I think in general that covers pretty much everything that, you know, we can agree on. What we disagree on, how useful the benchmarks are, and again, I said what I said. I don't think they're very useful. I think they are. It's better than nothing, but in terms of usefulness, very low. Okay, and then how misleading the benchmarks are. I think they are very misleading not because the benchmark itself is bad to do a bigger number. It's because the game doesn't have many golem type fights. Okay, when people say, "Oh, this is for group content," which group content? Raids? Have you seen the raids? So many fights are extremely different from one another that some of them are kind of golem fights. Some of them require very heavy burst, like that the Mystic Toilet boss, the first one, where he slams his fist, and then like when you break him with the swords and you do like 200% more DPS on him, okay, or 100%, don't remember the percentage, right? You have those fights that require a very heavy burst. The whole fight is burst, by the way. Okay, and then you have fights that there's like the bosses are swapping over and over, right? So it's like playing condition there is not great. Then you have bosses that run away a lot, that you have to be at a distance a lot, that you have to run back to the boss a lot, let's say Kadim, right? With the platforms, right? Probably better to be Condi on that one. Okay, the problem is how different these fights and how not viable your build becomes based on the fight. This is the problem with Guild Wars 2. And again, is this a big problem? Not really. But it is a factor that goes into me saying this is why benchmarks are like not very like pretty useless. Again, not useless, very low on the usefulness chart. But they're also very misleading because you see a big benchmark and you're like, oh damn, I'm gonna be doing big DPS, and then you go into a fight that this benchmark means absolutely nothing for. Okay, let's go to the magnificent tool, my favorite, not really, tool called Paint. All right, magnificent. Let's make a little chart here. Okay, here's the chart. I want to be straight. Like me. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry. This is just, come on. There we go. Okay, so how do you add text? Here we go. Okay, so this is DPS. This is skill level. Okay. You're gonna have, this is the benchmark. Okay, let's do benchmark in red. Okay, there you go. Wait, straight. Okay, this is the benchmark. All right, let's say this is the benchmark because this is arbitrary number, right? So it doesn't matter what the number is. This is the benchmark for Guild Wars 2, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14. Okay, I mean, I'm only gonna talk about WoW and Guild Wars 2, but if I say WoW, it kind of applies to Final Fantasy 14 as well because they're similar in the way that the DPS works. Okay. Now, if you play World of Warcraft, okay, and you sim for DPS, okay, your DPS would be something honestly, it's pretty much a straight line. This would be your DPS, right? Almost touching, maybe touching the benchmark. Okay, this is your DPS if you sim, and if you have the skill, if you're simming for single target bosses, you are very likely to get very close to your sim target. If you're simming for AoE bosses, you are very likely, and sometimes even better, better DPS than your sim. Okay, if you're simming for Mythic Plus, which is basically AoE, you will be very close to reaching your sim. Okay, because the combat is extremely simplistic. Okay, the combat in WoW works like this. Okay, you have, I'm just gonna draw it. Okay, so you start the fight, people pop their cooldowns, this is your DPS. Cooldowns are over, this is your DPS. Cooldowns are up, this is your DPS. Cooldowns are down, this is your DPS. Okay, similarly in Final Fantasy 14, even though the cooldowns are a bit different, works very similarly. That, you know, this is the start of the combat, you pop your 1.5 minute cooldowns, you get to here, and then you go down. The cooldowns in WoW last a bit longer, right? And then you don't have cooldowns, then do DPS, then you do have cooldowns, then do DPS, right? And this will be your Final Fantasy 14. Okay, the cooldowns in WoW last longer. Also, this is like not correct, honestly. This is this needs to be slightly lower. Okay, this needs to be about here, because you don't have lust for the second time. Okay, but so it's like minus the lust. Okay, so this is your second, you know, cooldown DPS. Okay, whereas Final Fantasy 14, every 1.5 minutes you're doing your big like rotation. All of your rotations revolve around the 1.5 minute. Okay, when it comes to Guild Wars 2, you're kind of like this. Start to end, you're kind of like this. Okay, you're, well, probably a bit higher. Okay, let's be a bit nicer. Okay, there's somewhere like this. Okay, like you're going, it's a wave. Okay, sometimes you have more damage, sometimes you have slightly less, but it's still overall very close to the center. Okay, why is this a problem? Why is this not a problem, honestly? Right? And in my opinion, it's not that big of a problem. But this means that whenever you stop DPSing in Guild Wars 2, okay, you're losing a lot of DPS. When you stop DPSing, right? If you stop DPSing in World of Warcraft, in around here, you're barely losing any DPS. Barely. So it's like you're gonna have a small break in this area of the fight. You're not losing a whole lot of DPS. Similar with Final Fantasy 14, right? If you can't do your DPS at around this area, right, and obviously your raid team will be adjusting the cooldowns based on the boss fight, when to use the cooldowns and stuff. If you're losing your DPS around here, this is where like the boss goes invulnerable or phases or something like that, you're not losing a whole lot of DPS. In Guild Wars 2, though, at any point that you're losing your DPS, at any point, be it here, be it here, be it here, you're losing a substantial amount of DPS, because the fluctuations of DPS in Guild Wars 2 are extreme. Okay, and that is what happens is, right? So when you are fighting in a raid and you have a moment where you can't do DPS, right? Every fight is different. Okay, you will never be here except fights that increase damage when you're fighting it, or the whole fight is basically a golem fight, which is like less than 5% of the actual combat in PvE in Guild Wars 2 is a golem fight. Okay, the representation is so freakishly low of a golem fight that's why the benchmark kind of like, it's not useless, but it's pretty damn close. It is just not the right tool for the job. Is there a better tool? No. Is it better than nothing? Yes. Can I think of a better tool? No. It is what it is, okay? But this is just a fact of the matter. The benchmark and the way the PvE content is made do not fit together, okay? They might have like a little bit of like, you know, you see where my fingers touch? Maybe like that part, this is where they can like mesh together. Everything else, they are not touching. They have no correlation to one another, okay? That's why they're misleading to say the least, okay? And again, they're also misleading because if you're a new player or newish player, or especially if you come from World of Warcraft and you go, because everybody tells you to go to Snowcrows to copy a build, okay? And then you go, you click on benchmarks, and then you see the list. You're like, oh, I want number 1, maybe number 2, maybe number 3. Meanwhile, sometimes number 10 is out DPSing, not even sometimes, pretty often. Amalgam was out DPSing Antiquary in the previous video. So, you know, but hey, it's not misleading, guys. It's not misleading. Well, it's not misleading when you already know everything. It's like saying, oh, the news don't lie if you already know the truth. It's like, oh, they just did a play on words, but we know what they meant, right? No, like, there is such a thing called misleading, okay? Even just because you know the truth of the matter doesn't mean that this isn't misleading, okay? This is what DPS in Guild Wars 2 looks like. This is your benchmark, okay? Your fight can be something like this, and then DPS, right, skill level, here, let's say skill level barely matters, and then your skill level matters so much, and your knowledge and stuff, and then it's like it skyrockets. Okay, sometimes it barely matters, so it would be like a circle. Sometimes it would be a fucking parabola. You know too much, so you're doing less DPS. Okay, because you're trying to do your best, and then it's like, but you forgot that the boss is, I don't know, going into a phase, right? So it's like, because you have more skill on your, like, you know your rotation so well that like you hit the pinnacle of your rotation exactly when the boss goes to invulnerable state. Meanwhile, if you didn't know your rotation, you're gonna do more DPS because you like missed your fucking key moment. Okay, I don't know. I'm making shit up at this point, obviously, but all I'm saying is that this is not even remotely close to how it is in the other MMOs. Okay, skill level sure correlates with your damage, but it's not a straight line. Okay, it is probably more close to this. It is probably maybe something like this, like a stair, okay? But it's nowhere near this, okay? Where like actually if your skill is really good, you can pretty much achieve your sim on pretty much every fight, okay? And again, the other thing with Guild Wars 2 is this point just might not be reachable in many fights. Maybe the point, like the bench says 66k DPS, but because of how the boss works, it is actually should be somewhere around here. Like this would be your pinnacle of DPS. This is a huge fucking gap. Okay? That's why benchmarks in Guild Wars 2 are misleading. Simple as that. Like, I don't know. Like, I can't make it any more simple. You have a paint document now. You have a paint document, man. You can view benchmarks, which I think is the correct way to view benchmarks, is view it as a standalone. Okay, your goal, if you're making this antiquary build, okay, which is probably not the best example because it relies on like some, you know, some RNG. Okay, if you copy this build, okay, your goal is to be able to do 66k DPS. You only measure yourself against what the specialization can do. That is the correct way to view benchmarks, okay? But you don't measure it against the evoker, or don't measure it against the amalgam, okay? The number here doesn't really matter. You can just call it S tier, A plus, S plus tier, okay? So S plus, S, and A plus, okay? You're not measuring them against one another, okay? It doesn't matter. Sorry, this is S plus, this is, I don't know, like a 10 out of 10, and this is, I don't know, using another measurement, okay? They're like, you don't measure them against one another. The thing is, as a new player, especially if you come from WoW, you see this and you're like, I want this guy. I want this guy because he does the biggest dicks. Okay, he has the biggest dick DPS. I want this guy. This is where benchmarks are misleading. Okay, this number means nothing. Having them as like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, honestly, these numbers shouldn't be there. This is not number 1 DPS. This is what, if you look at it at face value, it's like, oh, you just don't understand what benchmarks are. I understand what benchmarks are. You do not have the perspective of somebody who is somewhat new to the game. Okay? You see these numbers, you take it as, oh, this is number 1. Oh, this is number 2. Oh, this is number 3. I want to be number 1. I'm going to copy number 1. And then the reality is, okay, Your number one, as proven in the previous video, okay, more often than not, is nowhere near number one, okay? Nowhere near number one. Nowhere near number one. He is number one in Wing 5, okay? Great. That's great, okay? He's doing really well in Wing 5. But you have, out of 8 wings, you have 5 bosses. Where, and again, thankfully 4, but 5, right? Again, based on the previous video, bosses where Antiquary is doing great. That is misleading. When I see this chart, I think Antiquary is the shit. Dude, there is like 7 builds of Antiquary in the top 10. Sorry, 5 in the top 10, but like 5 in the top 7. Okay? Meanwhile, Amalgam is actually the fucking GOAT. Meanwhile, Ritualist is the GOAT. Okay? Evoker is the GOAT. Shit, at some point, Bladesworn and Reaper do better than Antiquary. That's fucked up. Alright? Because the bench that you're using does not correlate with any real scenario in the game. Except for like very, very small amount of examples. Okay? It doesn't correlate to most strikes. Okay? It doesn't correlate with most metas. It doesn't correlate with most raids. The fuck does it correlate with? Just that it's consistency, that there's consistency, that is, it correlates with itself. Is that all it is? That's all it is. It doesn't correlate with anything. It's just a consistent metric we can use, which is better than nothing. Okay? So yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say about this topic. This is the last video on this topic. I hope I made my point clear about what I think about benchmarks. Honestly, if you want to raid, use Wingman. Honestly, if you want to do anything, use Wingman. Find something here that is like the most relatable, okay, build for you that, you know, does well everywhere. Honestly, I would just recommend Soul Beast. Like, just go Ranger. Like, you'll do well in pretty much all content. I wouldn't say you'll be the best, but like, honestly, just go fucking Ranger, or Engineer as well. Yeah, like, just, yeah, don't go Thief. Thief is like, leave Thief for PvP. It doesn't. It's garbage. Okay. But yeah. Anyways, now I activated the Thief mains. Yeah, stick to World v World and PvP, you fucking losers. Okay. Damn it. Almost went 25 minutes without flaming somebody. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you understand my point and why I even made that first video. What I mean when I said benchmarks are misleading. What I mean when I say, well, when I exaggerate that benchmarks are useless. Okay. One last point though. I know I keep doing this when I say bye and then I have one last point. One last point is it better to use a benchmark build than just going in blind into a raid, not knowing what the fuck? Sure. Yes, any direction is better than no direction. Deciding to go left in an unknown road that splits left and right is better than standing still and not knowing where to go. Okay? Anything is better than nothing, as small as it is. But honestly, again, as I would say, this is something that probably most people in my comment section disagree with me with, that we can agree on. Play something you find fun, master it, find ways to improve on it while still maintaining the fun. If you can do 25 to 30k damage in your favorite content, you're doing more than enough. You do not need much more than that anywhere, except maybe very specific CMs. But again, if you're doing 25 to 30k in most, is there room for improvement? Yes, but make sure you're having fun. That's it for this video. That's it for this topic. Thank you all for letting me farm this shit. Man, it was started as a random Wednesday rant and did not expect it to blow up to what it became. So thank you even to all the haters. I'll see you in, I don't know, where are we? Interior? In Castor, I don't know, that new continent that I really dislike. Yeah, I'll see you there. Bye.